Hello everyone and welcome to another video of the Sky channel. In this video I'm going to be talking about the strongest Guardian shooter unit out there using free-to-play ants. And of course you can already see what that unit is because I have it open on my screen right now. And I'm going to talk about why it is so effective and what are some other alternatives that you could use to have a similarly strong impact in PvP. Now I know at the top you can see that I have a pay to win insect. I want you to ignore that one for now because that's the only option I have at the moment. But if you don't have that insect, you can use any universal insect. Ideally it should be 11 star to have the maximum impact, but even if it's lower, that's not a critical concern. But essentially you want it to be a universal insect so that it benefits both the guardians and the shooters in your unit. Now in row 1 we are using the PA, and what's so special about the PA is the fact that it is a very strong tank, right? If you look at skill number 2, in the first 2 rounds it enters a guard status. It's not able to launch normal attacks, but look at the reduction in the damage taken, 60% reduction in damage. This of course combined with the fact that your row 1 is guardians, and as everyone knows, guardians have a very high base health and very high base defense to begin with, make sure that your first row is a very solid tank. If your first row is able to survive longer and take in all of the normal attacks of the enemies, you have a much higher chance of having your back row survive longer and deal a lot more damage. And that's what makes this very special. Now a lot of times you're going to be facing the shooter Baron meta, which is basically DB, Weaver Ant, and Wise Berserker. That's still very commonly used, and this skill in particular counters that unit very effectively, because it reduces the damage taken by such a large amount. And the fact is, those are shooter ants attacking you, but you have a guardian row that's defending, and that guardian row is already extremely powerful, but it also reduces the damage taken by so much, making it quite an effective counter. Next up, skill number 5 does some damage and actually gives you the opportunity to silence an enemy, which is of course quite helpful. And skill number 8 is a reasonable damage dealer, dealing damage to 2 random enemy squads, which is helpful as well. But of course the primary objective of this row 1 ant is survivability using your guardian row. The second ant is a jungle ant that was considered ineffective by a lot of people until it finally found its calling. Skill number 2, if your troop attacks first, increases the damage by 30%, and if your troop attacks second, reduces the damage taken by 30%, which is quite helpful because of course if you're attacking first it increases the damage you do, and hopefully that's the one that you're going to be triggering. But if you're attacking second, it reduces the damage that you take in, which is also fairly effective. Now skill number 5, 70% chance to copy a damage skill of a backline shooter squad, and the skill effect is additionally increased by 25%. So not only is it copying the damage skill, it's also making it more powerful. And finally, skill 8 gives health of 30% to all of our squads, and every time a skill is released, there's a 50% chance to increase the defense of its squad by 45%, and it's stackable, and then it also heals itself with a healing ratio of 150. So giving a lot of health to all of our squads and then increasing its own defense, which is stackable, which is amazing as well. And then there's that healing effect that comes into play, allowing you to live longer. Finally, in the last row, we have Reapmaster. And if you know one thing about Reapmaster, it is that it does a ton of damage. Look at skill number 2, 308% plus special ant level multiplied by 5, which means 250 plus 308. That is 558% damage from this one skill. Of course, the probability is just 50%, but the damage is crazy high. Then skill number 5, another 40% chance with a round of preparation, and then another crazy amount of damage. We're talking 316.5 plus 250, so 566.5% damage to to one random squad, and of course suppressing them, making them unable to move for 2 rounds. Now skill number 8, another crazy one. In rounds 2, 5, 7, there's a 50% chance to deal 450% damage to all 3 enemy squads. So just by looking at it, you can see that it does a lot of damage with a little bit of a low probability, but the damage is insane. Now its awakening gives it the ability to do even more damage by increasing its skill damage, and it also gives the ability to deal more damage to all squads in its first ability. And now the interesting thing is the Jungle Ant copies one of the damage dealing abilities of Reapmaster, which is already doing so much crazy amount of damage, and then it increases the effect of that skill by 25%, and as you can imagine, that makes that skill even more powerful than it already is. So 25% extra power for those amazing damage dealing skills, and then it releases it, and as you can imagine, it is extremely effective and deals a lot of damage. Now if you aren't that lucky with Reapmaster and somehow got extremely lucky with Sahar and Silver Ant, this works pretty well as well. Now I've heard reports that Reapmaster does a little better, but then again it's because a lot of people have Reapmaster maxed out while their Silver Ant is usually 0-star. Now when I did some tests, I found that a 4-star Silver Ant and Reapmaster were doing fairly similar in their effectiveness. Now Silver Ant of course does have a high chance of dealing a bunch of damage, and what it does is in skill number 2, for example, it deals 250% damage twice to an enemy, and it applies a layer of vulnerability, and what that does is that increases the damage the target takes from this particular skill by 12%, and it's stackable, so the more times it releases, the more damage it ends up doing using that skill. Skill number 5, another high chance to deal 230% damage to all enemy squads, and then skill number 8, it has a 70% chance to increase the positional distance of its squad by 1, and then for every 1 range between yourself and the enemy squad that you're attacking, it increases the damage by 10%. So overall, Silver Ant is a very powerful ant as well, and of course CI can copy one of those damage dealing skills, so that's going to be either skill 2 or skill 5, increase the effect by 25% and release it on the enemy. So of course what we want to do now is we want to see the effectiveness of this unit in battle. So we're going to go into our mine reports and we're going to go into the rival list. Now remember, these are people that have previously defeated me, so you may not be seeing a lot of victory reports, but we will see how effective the units are. Okay, so here's one. It's a pure Guardian unit, and this is not particularly that powerful against a pure Guardian unit to begin with, but you can see that our CI did 65,000 kills and our Reapmaster did 61,000. But the enemy's Leaf Devourer ended up doing a lot of damage to us. Let's look at their stats, and their stats are definitely higher than mine, which makes sense, right? Because they did defeat me. So let's try another one and let's see what goes on here. Very close battle, and they are using the Baron Shooter meta that I was talking about. They did manage to beat me, but let's check it out in a little bit more detail. Right, so CI did 64,000, Reapmaster went crazy, 124,000 kills, and let's see how the enemy did. You can see DB not that much damage. Of course, Weaver doesn't do much. Their Wise Berserker ended up doing a bunch of damage, and they actually got a lot of troop kills with the last revised Berserker, which is of course expected, as that's what the Baron Shooter meta is all about. If we were to take a look at the stats, you can see that their stats are of course much higher than mine. We're talking 1600% attack and almost 600% health. Now, we did manage to almost beat them despite the big difference in our stats, and that's something that I consider impressive. Let's give it another shot and maybe we can... Oh, and there you go. We won. See, despite the fact that they had such higher stats than us, we were still able to defeat them because number 1, our unit is pretty effective, and number 2, our unit does counter them. Okay, let's try another one here. Let's see what happens. Only 39%. Again, it's a pure Guardian unit, so I don't think that there's much need to go into too many details, but we'll go through it anyway. You can see CI did a bunch of damage, Reapmaster not so much, and the enemy is using a pretty good Guardian meta unit, just that they have Hairy Panther instead of the Iron Elephant, because this is the free-to-play meta right now, and I'm not surprised that I was defeated. I'd probably even be defeated if their stats were similar, but they're not. They actually do have much higher stats than me, but the Guardian meta is quite effective against our unit and against generally most units out there. Let's try another one and let's see how this one goes. Again, we're talking about Guardian. You can see how most of the people that were able to defeat me are using pure Guardians, which is not that much of a surprise. And let's try this last one here. It is using the shooter meta, and you can see I didn't do very well. Let's take a look at what happened. Of course, CI and RM managed to do a bunch of damage, and the enemy is probably going to be showing similar numbers as the last one. Well, not similar, but you can see Wise Berserker pulled in a lot of kills, and so did the troop kills from the Wise Berserker's unit. Now, my assumption is their stats are probably crazy high, and I'm not wrong. We're talking almost 1850% attack, 1600% defense, and 650% health, and their combat speed is much higher than ours as well. Despite that, we did manage to get 1.3 million damage in, so that's not that bad. So let's look at some of our successful defenses, and here you can see Ant I again using the Baron Shooter meta, and you can see that I was able to defeat them quite effectively. And let's take a look. We have CI doing a reasonable amount of damage, and you can see here I'm actually using Sahar and Silver Ant, and Sahar and Silver Ant went crazy with a very high amount of damage. Going to the enemy, they were only able to do a little bit of damage, and of course a reasonable amount of troop kills from Wise Berserker's row. And if you were to look at their stats are a little higher than mine, right? We're talking almost 1500% attack, 1100% defense, and about 600% health. Despite the higher stats, they lost because my unit does counter them, and of course there is a good synergy in the unit, which helps make it more effective. They of course tried again, and again they lost pretty badly. Okay, let's talk about one of the Baron Land reports. And over here you could see again somebody using the Baron Shooter meta against me. Now, of course, their unit was partially injured. They only had 165,000 ants alive at the time of the battle, and they did manage to do a lot more damage to me. But here's the thing. Look at the difference in our stats, right? I have 1700% attack, and they're almost 2500. They have a higher combat speed than me, and of course, there's a major difference in our health as well. Despite that, you can see how well I was able to perform and actually kill off all 165,000 ants without losing all of my ants in the process. Again, going to the fact that they were using the Baron Shooter meta, and my unit is an effective counter to the Baron Shooter meta while also being a cohesive unit, allowing it to do a lot of damage. And since I still have you here, I do want you to know that you can get between 10 to 35% bonus on in-game purchases in the Ants Underground Kingdom. All you need to do is follow some simple steps that I'm linking to the video that you can find in the description of this video, and join a bunch of other people that are taking advantage of these amazing bonuses, including some whales that are ever so thankful because they save so much money when they make purchases in the Ants Underground Kingdom. If you have any questions, you can join our Discord and I can guide you through the process myself as well. So make sure you check out the video. Make sure you're using the most up-to-date promo code. The current one is Sky8 and it's remaining valid until 20th of October. Close to 20th October, I'll let you know what the new promo code is, or maybe you might just have to enter the exact same promo code Sky8 again. That's something that I can tell you in Discord as well as in the community section of our YouTube channel. So if you go on our YouTube channel on a browser, you'll see a community section that you can click where I can actually make posts that you can read and find out what the latest promo codes are. Now, before I end, I do want to mention that if you do not have PA, you could also use the MB, which also has a nice ability to survive pretty long and reduce the amount of damage that it takes in from the enemies. It may not be as effective as PA, especially against the Baron Shooter meta, but it can still do the trick if you don't have PA to begin with. And that covers this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked it and learned something from it. If if you did, please share it with your friends. Please write a comment below, like the video itself, subscribe to our channel, and check out some of the other videos on the channel as well. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next one.